Thank you for joining us once again. Let's take a look at the newspaper before we delve into today's interview. Welcome to the Evening Review. My name is Sukhwana Klache, and joining us in studio is Ingrid Husselmann with the Office of the Ombudsman. She's the children's advocate. Evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Evening Review.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Ma'am, but what is the purpose of your office, the children's advocate, within the Office of the Ombudsman?
So in order to answer that question, I think I must maybe first talk about the role of the Ombudsman. So the Ombudsman in Namibia is both the public protector as well as the national human rights institution. So because the Ombudsman has the mandate to protect and promote human rights, the children's advocate is in the office of the Ombudsman because the children's advocate is there to assist the Ombudsman to fulfill his constitutional mandate when it comes to the protection of children's rights, because children's rights are human rights as well.
And now, coming back specifically to your office.
Okay, so in terms of the Child Care and Protection Act, it is provided that there must be a children's advocate. So it's just a person who is dedicated solely just for protection and promotion of children's rights. So basically what we do is we receive and investigate complaints from people, anyone, including children, particularly people who take care, like who provide services to children, like nurses or doctors or teachers. And so anybody can come and lay a complaint with our office. And we also advocate for laws to be changed where we feel like these laws are maybe not out there to protect children properly, and we also make sure that the laws that are there to protect children, like the Child Care and Protection Act and all of the international conventions to which Namibia is a party, like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, that all of those laws are properly implemented for the protection of children in Namibia.
What are the challenges facing the Namibian child at present?
Given the circumstances that we are under the current pandemic and the state of emergency regulations and the school closures, this means that children are at home 24/7, and many children are now at a bigger risk of harm in terms of abuse. Because if you can imagine, previously a child would, who's maybe in a difficult household, would be able to escape whatever circumstances that are there, that is in the house that's maybe not so favorable, by going to school in the morning, and perhaps the abusive parents are now unemployed due to the situation. Now all of them are just cooped up in one house, and so the risk of harm and abuse is just so much bigger. And coupled with that is also the fact that a lot of children in Namibia, about the Ministry of Education's statistics indicates about 400,000 children participate in a school feeding program. So where they get at least one meal a day that they would otherwise not have received. So in the times that we are in now, those kids are not receiving that one meal a day. So I would think those are pretty much the issues kids are facing right now.
We recently had a lockdown where part of the lockdown was that there was a ban on the sale of alcohol. Would you say that during that time when no alcohol was sold, that there were lesser incidences of child abuse being reported?
Well, I can only comment on what I've read in the media, because we don't per se receive complaints regarding child abuse. That's not our role. But yes, the information that was provided to us does indicate that there's been more incidences of domestic violence, including violence towards children, ever since the ban was lifted versus the time that the ban was in place.
Okay. Namibian Sun recently reported an incident where the family of a rape victim said that they were prepared to drop the case after the perpetrator's families had asked for forgiveness from this family. This was a rape attempt by multiple people on this one individual. How frequently do you have to deal with such cases in your office? Okay,
so the protection of children generally is with the parents of a child, right? We know that doesn't always happen, so there are always places of alternative care for kids, as well as the broader community and relatives and so forth that's responsible for taking care of children. But the ministry that is responsible for the implementation of the Child Care and Protection Act is the Ministry of Gender. And so whenever a child finds him or herself in a situation where, or somebody close to the child who knows that the child is at risk of harm or being caused harm, whatever form of harm it may be, physical, psychological, sexual, then the place to report such violence against a child is with the Namibian police or with a social worker within the Ministry of Gender. So things of that nature doesn't get reported to the children's advocate per se. It is only when the service providers who must give these services to children fail that people come to our office to come and complain. So to answer your question, we don't have statistics with regard to how often things like this happen with kids. We just know about what is reported in the media, and also when people get frustrated with the speed maybe of the processes that's being followed with other service providers, do they come and complain to us. But generally speaking, child abuse is rife in Namibia. Violence against children is rife. The UNICEF did a survey recently on this particular subject, and the statistic shows that a lot of child sexual abuse remains unreported, and it's perhaps because oftentimes the people who perpetrate these offenses against children are normally relatives or friends of the family, and it goes unreported either because the child is groomed to the extent that the child never says anything, or because the families hide it within themselves and try and resolve it within the family unit. But when it does get out there and it does get reported to the police, even then the statistics are quite shocking that kids in Namibia are generally exposed to a lot of sexual violence.
Within the legal context now, and of cases that you are aware, and of cases that have been reported to the police, and other cases that probably the decision of the Prosecutor General is pending, in instances where victims or their families would like to withdraw such charges, do you have any leeway to ensure that justice is followed through?
Well, I have to start off by saying that the ultimate decision whether or not to prosecute ultimately lies with the Prosecutor General and with the Prosecutor General alone. And a lot of factors will influence that decision, that is whether to prosecute or not. And but in an instance such as this, especially where a child is concerned, the family's desire to withdraw will not play any role whatsoever, because it is the interest of the child concerned, who's the victim of the crime, as well as the community in general, that is paramount. So we do obviously monitor situations such as this, and anybody's free to come and lay a complaint with our office. And when we do pick up on irregularities, or people do come and report things like this to us, then we do investigate it and make recommendations to the relevant OMAs or agencies or officers to do the right thing. But in this instance, I don't think that there's any fear that the Prosecutor General will withdraw this case based on, or that particular case based on the parents' views that they'd forgiven the perpetrators. No.
We've had a very interesting year in respect of the fact that children have not had the ability to go back to school because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. What are your views on the reopening of schools? The Children's Advocate is actually, we are in support of children going back to school, and the reasons for that is varied, because we believe, like I mentioned earlier about the school feeding program, about children being more at risk to all forms of violence when they don't go to school. Those are all factors that are very pressing. But in addition to that, children are very resilient, and they need structure, like also that typical school day type of structure and routine in order to feel safe. And then the medical evidence shows that children are less at risk of contracting COVID, and when they do get sick, when they do contract it, they are less likely to get sick, and they are also less infectious. So the risk to children are probably way less than people seem to think. And then we mustn't underestimate kids. They themselves should be advocates for just general health and well-being, and even very young children, if you go and ask them now anything about COVID-19, they'll tell you. And they'll also be able to tell you how to prevent it and what you need to do. So yes, we are definitely in support of children going back to school, because this disease is not going, this virus is not going anywhere, and we all need to learn to live with it. In terms of the budget that is allocated to the Office of the Ombudsman, how does that particularly impact on the work that you're able to do as the Children's Advocate?
Well, The Ombudsman, and by extension the Children's Advocate, is largely dependent on government funds, and so given the current economic situation that we are in, I think nobody can say that there's abundance of funds for anything, but the Ombudsman does have access to sufficient resources, financial resources within reason, to do his job.
Thank you for joining us on the Evening Review.
Thank you for having me.
Please do stay tuned for the weather. Good night.